So make sure you stay here until the end. Right, so I'm going to introduce Andrea Ene. She's a senior advisor oil and gas at Capgemini, and she will speak about how to persuade offshore staff to accept planning decisions made onshore. I think that's an excellent headline that fits very well with some of the stuff that we heard earlier today, where we talked about what the need to establish trust between various organizations that are going to work collaboratively. And we also heard about some of the challenges that this could lead to if you, for instance, move people from offshore into an onshore environment and they have to change their work habits. So that will be interesting. Andrea has a PhD in applied mathematics to fluid mechanics. She specializes in organizational work process change strategy, and she has a very impressive list of fluent languages, including English, French, Norwegian, Romanian. Hope you'll use one of the languages we understand today. She works for Capgemini and is the leader for the upstream advisory group based out of Stavanger. So, Andrea.
Thank you. Carl told me to talk about how to convince people offshore to accept planning decisions made onshore. If I knew, I wouldn't be here. There's no recipe, but you can make it happen. So I'm going to talk about our past experiences and what we have learned in the past 6 years by working with various oil and gas companies, some of them here in Stavanger, and looking into specifically into integrated planning, what that means and how to make it happen. And integrated planning is part of a larger area that can be included into business information management. So in the new operating models, there's a shift into the decision-making process, and everybody talks about that. Decisions are taken onshore and execution is made offshore. But the owners of the planning process, that's a little bit more new, of having the planning made onshore. And there's a huge impact in this area. So successful operators, and what do I call the successful operators? I let you define it, but you can take the McKinsey benchmarks, for example, for the North Sea or any other benchmarkings. But the successful operators are ensuring this adherence to global processes and best practices. And they do the integration of people, organization, and technology, who's been our mantra into integrated operations for a long time. So the goal when you have integrated planning is really not achieving perfect plans. There's no such a thing. But it's improving the way you plan your activities in each department. You identify them, you consolidate them in one plan, you schedule them, you prioritize them, and you optimize them. So it's integrated planning. It's a important element and tool in achieving what I call operational excellence. So first of all, what is operational excellence? How would you define that? Let me show you oops, sorry, that was not Visio I wanted to start. I do apologize. What you see here is a picture of the US Navy Nimitz-class aircraft carriers, and there are a lot of things that are happening on such a carrier. So typically, planes are too low on fuel. You have man overboard situations. They try to land the plane on a runway that is theoretically too short, and the runway is on the move, and they face a different direction from the vessel. And it also may happen by night. So there is fueling, plane inspections, everything they can think of about it. But what they have here is a non-negotiable chain of command. And all the functions, they function, they are as part of a machinery. So, if I go back to what is operational excellence, I couldn't resist to use those small equations, having done previously a lot in mathematics. So, if I simplify to the extreme, it takes strong leadership, teamwork spirit, and a problem-solving mindset. It sounds easy, and it's complicated. So, I define operational excellence as is not the perfection, but it's a continuous way to improve. So, how does it fit with the reality? It's very different. There are time-sliced plans that prevent you to elevate in the perspective. There are multiple planning tools. The drilling department is using a planning tool, and operational people a planning tool, and maintenance people a different one. You have multiple planning processes, and they are run independently. They are maintained from the function in the organization's department. They're not very coherent. And you have a perfect plan, when it comes to the maintenance work. But then someone, might comes from drilling and says, no, we have a very expensive well to drill. No, wait, we have to put that in our plan. And they're subject to a high degree of person dependency. And obviously it's reactive, it's not proactive. So the only identified objective is firefighting. And do I exaggerate with that picture? Maybe. But I believe most of us will feel like this, either Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, but during the week you will feel like this. So, having talked about what is the simple equations, what is the reality, and Charles was pointing out how many engineers were, right, we need to break it down in small pieces. As humans, we need to take it, one step at a time. So what you're looking at is, at the bottom, you would need an integrated organization. You need to have the clear roles and responsibilities, because that will help you drive the right behaviors. And then you need the management of process and technology. And you need to have in place the mechanism for effective actions. We love technology. We want to have a pilot at any time and try to introduce a new type of technology, but you need to manage that. You need to make sure that the organization doesn't get tired of being thrown technology at. You need a process for implementing and capability sourcing. So you need to engage and coach the business. Now, when you do that, you might hire external consultants, and that's fine at the beginning, but the change has to come from inside the organization. So, yes, you would use some consultants, but then you have to have your internal champions, the trainer, get them to spread the good word in there. If you sorted out the integrated organization, then you can move to the next level, which is an informed and aligned organization. You would need KPIs and reporting, so you know where you are. Because when you talk about planning, what I encounter very often is it's not that people have too few KPIs, they have too many KPIs. And they are incoherent. And people are reacting on what they are measured. So that's very important to have an alignment with the KPIs. Risk management, very important, not only on the technical side, but you need to know what levers can you pull, what are you allowed and what you're not allowed. And then the agile scenario in information analytics, you need to know your options. You need to know your scenarios. Where do I go? How many options do I have in a particular situation? And then if you move a step forward, you're going to take a look at tactical planning and resource allocation. So you need a flexible planning to support the strategic goals. And the plans should be activity-based, and resource allocation is a consequence of this. So I've seen very often that when people are talking about plans and they're in a planning meeting and they're going to decide the next few weeks offshore, they say, I do need two instruments and two automatics, and like, yes, but what are they going to do? What are the activities? Let's talk about the activity before you're going to decide who is Peter or Paul that is going to go on the platform. And then, the operational excellence is, as I said, it's an agile strategic goal setting. You plan to meet the changing market because there's one thing is things are going to change, whatever you do. So again, why do I want to talk about integrated planning? I love this picture, and I'm going to tell you why. It is a real picture. It's taken from a newly EU country, which happens to be my native country, Romania. And how on earth the railway company and the electricity company communicate, I think it's an enigma for the next generations to solve. But back to integrated planning for the oil and gas offshore assets. There are a few questions that will guide you. Do you have a potential for improving offshore resource allocation? Hands-on time? We know that an offshore personnel has 11 hours shift. How many of those hours are actually really used on doing the job that you hired them to do? Is there a potential for transforming corrective work into periodic work? Do you have a potential for grouping tasks? Do you have a need for monitoring work being carried out by subcontractors? So if you answer yes to some of those questions, then yes, the answer is yeah, integrated planning can help. The integrated planning puzzle is something that I'm using a lot, and we've been using it a lot. And we use it both from a process and the data perspective. So when I'm talking about the planning process, I need to know the who, the what, the where, and when. Then when I talk about the data, what data do I need for planning? And again, who has the data, what type of data, when do I need the data, and where do I get that data? And again, for our client engagements and our own thinking, we came up with our own interpretation of what integrated planning is. We see that as a common process that integrates plans, integrates and aligns all field activities to the strategic direction of the asset. And I'm going to come back to this a little bit later. So basically, integrated planning makes way for onshore planning of all operations and maintenance related activities. And you can make that part of onshore support centers. And most of the oil companies, at least in Norway, they all have at least one onshore support centers. ConocoPhillips has many of those. So you move again from individual discipline plans to more coordinated, holistic plans. You integrate with the vendors. Either is in your own house, or you go there where actually they provide you with their services. You remove the bottlenecks, obviously, and there is a multidisciplinary work process across offshore and onshore. You make way for shutdown and turnaround optimization, and it's planning on the right data at the right time. And you can flag critical dependencies that you might not have seen them if you would stick with the plans per department, I would say. So you can see, dependencies in terms of crane operations, shutdown, production reducing tasks, hot work, all that type of things would be flagged more easily. So as I said, we do use this puzzle quite a lot. So how do you plan? Basically, what we discovered as the most successful companies when they use integrated plan, there's only one plan, and that is the integrated plan. But there are two processes. It's the long-term planning and it's the medium-term planning. And the long-term planning is really the strategic business plan where you manage your CapEx, your OpEx, you define your asset targets, and you follow up the future main activities for the asset. So the business case for the long-term planning is to strike an optimal balance between CapEx and OpEx. But the biggest win, I wouldn't call that low-hanging fruits, but the biggest win to have is actually improving the way you are thinking on planning for the medium-term plan. Medium-term plan is anything between, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks to up to 6 months. And that's the window where, as humans, we are not very good at planning. You might know that in 6 months you want to paint the house, but it's not really until very close that you go and buy the paint and you start looking at the weather forecast and you discover that you need some extra tools, etc. It's just the human perception of that time window. So the medium-term planning is a tactical plan for refining, improving, identify those opportunities for workouts on the platform. You manage the constraints, and the objective is twofold. Is to reach the business goals that are set in the long-term plan, and on the other side is to produce stable execution plans. Because when you go into execution plan, when you go into that 1 week or 2 weeks execution plan for the personnel on board, you have to, you have a freeze baseline, and that's very important. So it's not critical that the information flows automatically between long-term plan and medium-term plan, because they have a different time perspective, and the level of details is different. So they are a little bit parallel, but they're interdependent. And when you make a revision of your long-term plan, it's really a stable strategic baseline. And the medium-term plan, as I said, is a tactical plan with a moving time window, and then the activities are continuously fed. And you get, again, measurable execution plans and personnel on board. So this is vital to get agreement. Once you get buy-in from an organization on this, it's not easy to move forward, but you made a long step. You are ahead. So the way it fits, really, it's, as I said, the biggest win is here, but the long-term plan is the wheel that sets the whole movement. The corporate strategic goals, the long-term goals, those are setting up the movement. So it's used as an input to the medium-term plan, and you use it to follow up the medium-term plan. And the medium-term plan is a tactical plan, okay? And you use it to develop those execution plans and handle the critical changes, because we know there's something is going to change. But there's one important thing. When you got acceptance on this, the next step is, because people are used to firefight, they're going to say, yeah, but changes happen all the time. I have to take care of those. No. There are two items that can change the plan. It's obviously HSE and production critical. Those are the two things that can change the plan. So execution plan is an operational plan for the current personnel on board, and it really is designed for ad hoc decision support when the critical changes are occurring. So when you talk about integrated planning, I would like to look at it as a true BI, business intelligence cube, because when you have the tools and you have the processes and the organization to support all those dimensions, you start feeding the improvements from inside the organization. So integrated planning is covering all these three dimensions. And how it does? Because if you integrate plan data from several data sources, that gives you information. And when you have information, you use the decision support tools and the collaboration across the boundaries, and a good process around working on integrated plan data, that turns you into insight. You have the business insight. And when you have the business insight, you start feeding back constructive improvements. And that's something we've seen also. You know, it sort of generates the improvements from inside the organization. So, from an IT perspective, dealing with integrated planning is really dealing with the 2/3 that is here. And there's a lot of work, and I deliberately chose not to talk about what is the technology and, you know, reports, and I could have talked for about an hour just about, you know, data warehouses and all the other things. But, you know, this is what had to be done in order to have what you can see, you know, the tip of the iceberg. And I was actually on the website for the conference. There was a quote saying that, referring to the Macondo, is the theory is that because it happened because the interface providing information about drilling operation was too complex. There was the vice president of drilling from Chevron. Yeah. So there are two ways of looking at this. Is really, you look at the whole picture and you just get, oh God, no, I'm not going to do this. And the other way is, okay, just accept it and sort of deal with it. And if you talk about the IT people, they'll have to be very conscious about the fact that they don't really care about this. They just don't care. They want to have things. They don't care that if you build an integrated planning tool that is feeding with all the information and it's too slow, they just simply don't care. But the business decision and the underlying analysis will not be possible. So it needs to be fed that the fact that it's complex, you need to feed that to them a little bit, you know, slowly, I would say. And Charles Darwin had famously said that it's not the stronger of the species that survives or the most intelligent that survives, it's the one that adapts to the changes. And that goes back to how am I going to convince the offshore people to accept the planning decision made onshore? Well, first you start by talking about integrated planning onshore, and you know, you get acceptance in that part of the organization. They take ownership, and you train the trainers, and you get your inside champions. Because you know, if I'm Ioana-Andreea Ene, I'll tell you that, oh, integrated planning is so nice. Nope, it doesn't going to work. But if you identify that champion that can talk, has the authority, is not in the management, but has the sort of knowledge authority to spread the good word, and you find, you know, it's much easier. It takes time, but it's much easier. So, in conclusion, success is the name of a suburb in Perth, and you get there by car, obviously. But, you know, based on Capgemini's experience and best practice, we have some reflections. And in order to get success in integrated planning, you obviously have to give up all ways of working. You have to go back, go from reactive to proactive planning. And you have to focus on two main planning processes, as I said, and you have to make it well. So you have to concentrate on the long-term planning as a business plan, and the medium-term plan, where you're going to manage the dependencies, handle the conflicts, ensure the resource utilization, and emphasize every time that the medium-term plan is an activity-governed plan, is not resource-driven. And in addition to this, one is the change management, because you need to capture, there's always information that needs to be captured. Activities identified by the organization. We talk about corrective maintenance work, production critical, safety critical, offshore travels that are not related to a specific activity. And I just love that in one of the projects, a senior VP, he said, when we get this done, I would love that the planner will come and tell me that my offshore travel wouldn't happen when I want it to happen. I'm prepared to take that risk. So it's that kind of commitment that you need to give. So the analogy I'm trying to make here is that strategy can help you win a war, tactics help you win a battle. And you have to, it might be possible to lose a few battles, but you can still win the war. Thank you.
So, thanks a lot, Andrea. Any questions for Andrea?
It's quite a refreshing talk because I guess for the last 10 years all of us have heard presentations about technology and how wonderful it is and very little about why it's hard, and your talk was almost entirely about why it's hard and why it's the hardest thing you've ever done, but it's only because it's hard that you're going to get anywhere. Is that how you see it as well, do you think?
Yes, it is. Yes, absolutely. Again, if you look at the iceberg and you get scared, you just get paralyzed. You're not going to do anything about it. You just need to start somewhere. It's like the integrated operations story with the elephant. A few years back, everybody was showing that what is I/O, and they were showing bits of the elephant. Doesn't matter. It's an elephant. So start somewhere.
Other questions? Okay, well, thanks, Andrea. While Andrea hands over the microphone to our next guest, I'll introduce Frode Sørmo. He is the Chief Technology Officer, Veranda Technology.